Nice to have you here.
So we started 7 years ago with the e-mobility thing. We learned a lot, and then we decided to move into the real world, and we set up a QB group. What we do is we set up fast charging infrastructure for electric vehicles, universal and standard, in many countries. Specifically, we have focused our efforts in emerging countries, Latin America and Asia countries, and now we also doing, I would say, a big effort in Europe.
Mm-hmm. You are managing the Mahindra team, right? So we will have some insights about the race tomorrow. And your chairman was supposed to be here today, Enrique Banuelos, but he can't make it. He's stuck in Africa.
Sure. Well, sorry about that. I may excuse Enrique. He was supposed to be here. He wished to be here with all of us, just sharing our experience within e-mobility in the past years. It's been a pity because he got stuck in Green Cape. Fortunately, he will be in Zurich tonight, and many of you that come on Sunday or that just walk around during the Zurich race will be able just to see each other in there. So.
Okay, but it's nice to have you here. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
We welcome very much Dr. Christoph Lauterwasser. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Christoph Lauterwasser is a representative from Allianz. He's Leiter at the headquarters in München, Center Technik. That means you're making crash tests, for example, also with e-cars. Just a little impression, are they crashing faster and more heavy than other cars?
Well, actually, we are mainly looking at the repairability and damage that happens at low speed, and they are quite similar to normal cars, that's what we found out, but it's important for us to understand the impact of new technologies on the risks. That's why we are working closely with car manufacturers like Tesla or BMW to understand that factor.
You're a partner of the Formula E races around the globe. What is the interest of Allianz in e-mobility?
Well, actually, there are two main issues. One is global warming is a real topic for the insurance because it will affect our book of business in many ways because storms, for example, can be very expensive and it's a high volatility. So we really have to do something about CO2 emissions in the future much more than we have done so far. And the other factor, obviously, Formula E is also a test bed for new technology and also creates an environment between people joining that in the Allianz e-Village, for example, and discussing new issues around new mobility.
Okay, thanks so far. We welcome Morten Hannesbo, a very well-known face here in Switzerland. Hi, Morten. Good to have you here. Hi, Morten. CEO AMAG Group, you know that, Vice President Auto Schweiz. We all know that you are a motor fan, and if I speak about motor, I mean a loud one, kind of a real one. So, what do you think about this Formula E stuff?
Well, I'm a fan of engines, of course. I'm a fan of many things. But I think the new technology is really exciting. So an e-car is not a boring car. It's a fantastic, exciting vehicle. And I think all of us will consider buying an e-car in a short time. Let's say maybe a couple of years or some in a few months when you see the new products that will be coming.
But since you sell e-cars, why don't you drive one, Morten?
So, yes, you know everything, don't you? I sometimes drive e-cars. I don't always drive e-cars. I have to test all our products. So for the moment, I'm driving a high-power 8-cylinder car with twin turbos, which I really like. But I also drive, a gas-powered CNG car as my second company car, so I get to know how that works. And that's also infrastructure issues. And sometimes I drive hybrids, and sometimes I drive e-Golf. So I'm quite flexible.
Okay, Pablo, let's quickly go to the race tomorrow. When I read the papers, actually I have to admit that I'm not very much in the sport part, but it's all about technique. It's about the fact that it's the first circuit race in Switzerland since more than 60 years. But nobody writes or speaks about winning. I mean, what is the goal of this Formula E?
This is a race. So, and then we have 10 pilots racing in there. And we also are supporting our pilots because from one subsidiary we are, as Christine said, we're hosting a Mahindra team. So on top of that, this is a race. As you're going to see strategies, you're going to see people just trying to pass each other. You're going to see people just changing the car because this is the last season that every pilot needs to use 2 cars per race. So they need to just stop by.
Because the battery is not lasting long enough.
It's not lasting enough. So, so technology we will discuss later is evolving rapidly. So they need to change the car. So there's going to be a lot of fun within, and they need also to manage the battery. I mean the battery storage.
What's the challenge? What is the challenge with the battery?
I mean, if well, you all know if you speed out a lot, you just take over much battery. So you need to balance when in the places that you can pass through, because it's a street circuit that is it's thinner. The roads are thinner than in a normal circuit, and also the speed is limited because of the technical safety of the circuit, and also you have the component on the battery side. So you need to balance as a pilot. You need to balance all these 4 or 5 factors just to take into account. And we were just discussing before. It's like a marathon. So you need to balance during the race and be able just on the last laps when you need just to make it happen, not at the first ones.
The ecological balance is not really nice about this Formula E race. I mean, you load it, you have a generator moving around the world, and you charge the battery with glycerine, right?
Yes.
So the balance is quite bad. How do you admit that?
We are trying to do our best, but we cannot save the world alone and in 2 days. So it's pretty difficult what we're doing. And also on the real project in QEV, we're trying to take CO2 emissions from the cities because we're doing fast charging infrastructure within the cities. So people tend to ask us, oh, but how about your energy? The energy that your clients are consuming, is it clean energy? Well, it's not about us. We just put in the fast charging infrastructure available to people that are driving EVs to take CO2 pollution, because 23% of CO2 emissions worldwide belong to the transportation sector. However, we need to integrate everybody within the value chain, generation, distribution, battery storage, and try to make this full value chain clean. So as per the Formula is concerned, facilities are still not ready to make it happen.
We will come to the point. It's infrastructure, it's market penetration, battery price, emotions, security. And Martin, this result, is this about what you have expected?
I think from this group of people, probably above average income. This is what you would expect. I think for the normal consumer, it will take a little bit longer before everyone is ready. So the normal consumer buys when he sees that this is a better proposition than what he has today if he drives a petrol or a diesel. And in those markets where you had incentives like Norway, you see that the change is rapid because it's cheaper. So it will take a little bit longer, but I'm pleased to see that we have many Audi e-tron potential customers here.
We cut that out. No. Christoph, would this result be the same in Germany, would you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people are getting more and more interested in electrical cars. I think the rates at which e-vehicles are bought at the moment are quite similar to Switzerland, around 1–2%. But I think we will see a quick rise in the future, especially since the offering by companies like Volkswagen will increase dramatically. And also we see that many vehicle companies, manufacturers, have goals to have 25% of electrical vehicles on sales in 2025, and that will be a massive increase.
I think I need to try harder in my speech here, just to make people more engaged on EVs.
Okay, go ahead, Pablo.
This is, I mean, we've seen that in the past 4 years when we're developing this project. I mean, this is the chicken and egg dilemma. There are no electric vehicles because there is no fast charging infrastructure, and on the other way around. So we are the fast charging operators. We are putting the fast charging infrastructure. So we bet hard on that. So now, in our opinion, the ball is on the side of the car manufacturers. They need to push hard, as Christoph said, on bringing the electric vehicles at an affordable prices. This is the real challenge to be able. And then we'll be here serving all of you.
Yeah, but the price is still the battery, is the high price. But Morten, just in a fantasy, if at the beginning of 2019, Swiss people, we have about 5 million registered cars, right? If they would say, like, now we are the good guys here on the planet, everybody buys an e-car, what would that mean for the power situation in Switzerland?
It depends on what size of e-car, but say an average e-car, you probably need 2 nuclear power plants to feed these cars, if everyone was driving electrical. But that's not going to happen, and also the vehicles will be much more efficient in the next few years. The batteries will be lighter, so lighter cars will be better for consumption of power. So, it's a matter of how fast can we really change this. I think the car industry has a big job to play. I think you, Pablo, has a big job to do. But I also think the insurance companies and the finance companies, they have a job to do. Because if we prohibitively price these services, that we take residual values are much lower than normal cars, it'll be too expensive for the customer to buy it. Or if insurance companies figure out they make more accidents, or they have more or different accidents, they will have higher prices. And we can't do that. For new technology, we need to help.
Would you like to answer?
Yeah, I think you have to see 2 phases. One phase is where you have a low market penetrations with electrical vehicles. There's no problem with the power that is available. But I think in the far future, when you have more vehicles, we need to marry the power industry with the vehicle, with the mobility. And I think there will be new business models, for example, because the battery can be a storage for electricity, especially when you have a lot of wind energy and solar energy, where you have changes in the production. And I think there could even be business cases where you get money for your battery. But that's the future, and that has to be developed.
This is the second market, right?
It's in the first market when the battery is in the vehicle, but also there's a second market for used batteries. And there are also companies already starting putting up stacks of battery and feeding back too much energy from wind energy, especially in Germany, back into the network. And I think these are interesting ideas.
Okay, may I just come back to you, Morten, because this is the Swiss Economic Forum. And what is the infrastructure situation right now in Switzerland? And what is the plan for the building up?
So the infrastructure in Switzerland is, I would say, embarrassingly low. We have very few charging stations available. About 150 of the fast ones and about 3,000 private ones or semi-private. And it's by far not enough. We need like 10 times more to be able to be mobile and for everyone to drive an electrical vehicle. So we really need to speed up very, very quickly. And I know this is difficult. The state will stop us from doing this because they don't want to commit on a 50-year contract. The owners of apartments won't let us install wall boxes because they don't want to take the charge and so on. So it's going to be really, really difficult. But in a few years, we won't think about this. This will be solved because the batteries are better. There'll be more charging stations. The cars will have a range of maybe 500 or 600 kilometers. And really, I don't today have a petrol tank at home either. So why would I need a charging station? But short term, I do need one. So this is the challenge.
The problem also in Switzerland is that there are more house or apartment renters than owners, and this is something
about
also the pension funds. Everybody has to think about when they build the houses or do renovation to install that.
You see, I live in a pretty new apartment, a rented apartment, only 3 years old. We don't have any power plugs in the garage, so every car parking needs a new power plug, and that costs 4,000 or 5,000 Swiss francs to do that. It is ridiculous that we don't fix these issues, but it is what it is.
How is it in Norway, by the way? Because they are far ahead with the infrastructure. Who is paying for it?
No, because I mean, in Norway, they were the first movers in e-mobility industry, so they have a lot of clean energy generation. So they wanted
which is somehow interesting, because they have a lot of oil, right?
Well, yeah, it's a country that is doing both things, but they've been traditionally very environmental conscious on that. So they started from the first moment to make it happen and to be able for residential the slow charge. So, but here we need to understand that, for example, in Quibi we do fast charge. That means that in 20 minutes you charge 60% of the battery. That is around 180 kilometers. So good deal, just take a coffee, just smoke a cigarette, and we locate in petrol station networks like British Petroleum or Shell or Ipiranga in Brazil or YPF in Argentina, but also we do in shopping malls, but it's always fast charging. You can combine this as a country strategy with a slow charge, that was them speaking. So you can do 6 hours, 8 hours, but there are businesses that people cannot wait. For urban mobility and for heavy users, for taxis, for Uber, for commercial fleets, logistic fleets can be very convenient, because if you compare energy prices with petrol prices, the huge amount of savings. Also, I expect from the insurance side there are also savings and maintenance. So at the end, it's a package of services that you save money, and then you compensate in a period of 5 years with the current price difference. But in 2 years, that the batteries will drop down and EV prices will drop down, then benefits will be much better for end users.
China is going to be the global leader in battery production, right? What does that mean for the market also in Europe?
Well, it's not just China, it's also in Asia, it's also Korea, because LG and Samsung are producing batteries today. Actually, I think it's very important that we have battery production in Europe in the future, and Siemens just announced that they want to enter this field, and from what I know, it's perfectly possible to do this, because the production cost of the battery is a small share of the overall cost of the battery. A lot of it is the material, but it needs high automation and it's a big investment. So I think these decisions still have to be made. But I don't think I can imagine that if we reach millions of electrical vehicles, that they will be shipped from Asia to Germany or France or Italy.
When will be the tipping point in Switzerland that we see industry a real change? When do you expect it?
That is a really interesting question. I believe we will see a change in behavior from consumers in about 3 years' time. So a lot of customers will say, okay, I'm ready, maybe higher income first. About 2025, we expect that 25% will be electrical vehicles of the new vehicle.
25% in 2025. That means 75% are still on the old cars, right?
3/4 are still petrol or diesel cars. And what we shouldn't forget is that electric vehicle has a speedy development in the coming years, but also the diesel engine and the petrol engine will be much better in 5 years than today. So the benefit will not be that big, that fast. So don't give up your diesel engine yet. Just keep buying them. We need you as a customer.
Interesting answer. No. Okay. Do you share these numbers about the tipping point for Europe, especially?
We don't take a look at the numbers, because we generate our own demand for our fast charging infrastructure. So we just offer services to corporate companies and public fleets and private fleets, blah blah blah. But I'm sure it's happening faster than what we expect. So if I take a look where we started, and then you can just search of the forecast of all consultancy companies, each year they update these figures and they get better and better than the year before for the same year. So I wouldn't pay much attention. What I'm sure, because we have partnered a lot of Chinese car manufacturers and a lot of Chinese companies, things are changing very, very fast, and we cannot imagine how things can evolve, especially with the new generations, that they are very environmental conscious. They don't want to own, they prefer to rent or to share. So things are changing very fast, and they say, no, I'm not going to take this. And they are changing behavior also on the consumption aspects.
Do you think the change will be like in comparison to the iPhone?
No,
like
we
exponential?
also take a look at the telecom industry. At the beginning, you'll have coverage in the downtown of a city, so that's what we did. We put in fast charging infrastructure in urban areas, and then it grew up exponentially. So we envision that within QEV. And also, I wanted to add, because we've been discussing about the potential power supply problems in the near future when all cars are electric. For us, it's not about the power generation and supply, it's about the grid parity. That is the real change. So with the battery storage that has been developed, you can balance with peaks and valleys. The problem with energy is not about the generation, it's about the match between supply and demand. So you have a lot of cars coming at the same peak hour, then you have a problem. It's not about that you don't generate energy enough. It's about this peak problem. With battery storage that has been advanced a lot in the past year, and it's going to become a key issue in the next two, I think maybe you don't need to generate more sources of generation, but you will balance.
This is the smart grid system, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Morten?
Yeah, I hope things will happen faster. We are in the business of selling cars. New products is what we want to deliver. But they have to be developed first, so even if we give all the energy we have and the car companies will develop and produce cars very fast, it will take a few years before they will hit the street. So I think the 2025 target of 25% of new vehicles, we believe is optimistic but doable. I think when you look further ahead, going to 50% electric vehicle within the following 5 years is definitely possible. But
so this will be the tipping point, 2030.
That could be the tipping point. You got other analysts who would say, well, it's going to go much faster than that, and it may go much faster than that in Zurich, or in Singapore. But in the mountain areas, it will not go faster. I can guarantee that, because there's no need for that, and it doesn't work there.
And if I may add, you should not confuse new sold cars with a stack of cars that you have on the road, because that takes much longer. A car lives long, so
but
the cars,
15 years.
But the average age of a car is around 9 years in the market, and the typical lifetime will be 15 years. So what is being sold today will be there in 2030, 2035 still. So the overall market is changing much more slowly than the new sales. That's an important factor. So we don't change the world from one day to the next.
I would like to stay with you, Christoph, for a second and talk about security. Because once in a while we find in the newspaper a story of a burning Tesla, most of the time. And I think it's a real pain if a EV is burning, especially with the battery. Do they burn very fast, faster than other cars, or is it just that they get more attention when they burn?
Well, first of all, I think the press coverage, there's much more attention on electrical vehicles than on other vehicles, because there are about 80 people killed in the German-speaking areas in car fires every year, and you don't hear so much about the other cases where that happens. So you have to be careful to make a judgment there. But still, it's a very sad event if it happens, obviously, and in fact, the fire brigades are telling us it's more difficult to extinguish the fire, for example. So it's very important in the design and safety of the car to make it as safe as possible. In fact, when we look in our statistics, we don't see higher rates of fires for electrical cars. So far, with a limited statistical base that we have, there's no evidence that there are more car fires for electrical cars.
But the problem is also when the battery is burning, and then you have a problem with the aftercare, right? With the aftercare of the battery when it's destroyed.
I mean that's all. But actually, I mean a battery that is damaged in a crash, it's being incinerated. So the way you do it is incinerate the battery. So and you cannot reuse them, obviously. But it's an important factor also for the eco-balance of the car, that you can use the battery as long as possible. And that's one of the issues we're looking at. So if you have a minor crash, the question is, at what point do I have to exchange the battery, and can I repair the battery? And that is important for two reasons. One is the cost of the battery, because the replacement battery is still above 10,000 euros. And the second point is the ecological balance side.
Pablo, how would you convince a skeptic to buy an EV?
I think you should drive one. So, definitely people raising hands, I would ask them how they feel after driving an electric vehicle. And
how would you feel like?
I felt excellent. Well, the first time I did it, it was such an interesting. So, in fact, people that like speed, they speed faster. So, and then you don't use the brakes so much, because then when you take out your feet from the accelerator pedal, then the car stops. So it's a very nice feeling when driving. But also, for our understanding and our experience, the great challenge was the battery range anxiety. So when EVs were 100 kilometers battery range, it was too short. So people get very nervous when the counter was at 20 kilometers or 10 kilometers. So they were taking off
but
everything.
But the range can be 500 kilometers right now, right?
But it's always about price. Costly effective. So in that case, now standard is 360 kilometers for, I would say, affordable prices. 360 is okay. So how many of you drive more than 50 kilometers per day?
This is Switzerland, see?
But not that much. Not that much. Maybe 20% or 15%. So that's why you need fast charging infrastructure. But there is no need for, I would say, for end user, for this amount of battery ranges. So it's, if you, not everyone can buy a Tesla or a Porsche e-Panamera or whatever. So that's the challenge here.
Yeah. Okay. A last question before we go to the audience again. But what about the alternatives? I mean, for example, we have a company in Switzerland. They are taking out the carbon dioxide from the air, pressing it to stone, put it in the ground, or even can make a transformation to bring it to fuel. I mean, this could be a competitive process. What do you think? You support them. It's
Audi has already made 2 plants where this power to gas technology is used. The problem is that you need quite a big space for the plant, and the cost is about 2 to 3 times higher than normal petrol or diesel. So it is possible, CO2 neutral is possible, but as long as it's expensive, people will not do it.
So may I ask you something? Your next car will be?
A Porsche E.
A Porsche E. Have you seen it already? You mean the Mission E?
Yes, the Mission E.
It looks quite sexy, right?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Oh yeah. You like when? When? You have ordered already?
You cannot order it yet.
Ah, okay. Yeah. But you are in the line, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Your next car will be?
An e-car, but I don't know when.
Ah, okay. So but you will buy another one in the meantime, or is it really the next car?
No, to be honest, I will drive my Audi diesel until I'm sure which one I would select.
Okay. Same question here. Your next car will be?
VW Touareg diesel.
Okay.
Probably gasoline engine.
Okay.
And the second car electric on the side.
Okay. Last time, this question?
Probably a classical petrol car.
Why?
I need a family car, and for the time being, that's what I get, I think.
Okay. Is it true, family car with E?
Of course.
Not possible?
Of course, yeah. You can. The product you will see in less than 2 years will cover all our needs, but they will be expensive. But they will be fantastic. So you should test drive them, irrespective of the brand. But of course, we would always welcome you.
As a summary, very short, what do we all have to do to make the change happen? You start, Morten.
I think we should go and test the product. You know, those who have not driven an e-car yet, go to a dealership, test drive it, have it for the weekend, and you'll see if it works for you already, and I think it will. So that would be my hope and my recommendation.
Christoph.
I think we will have to bring the costs down dramatically, so you have to turn every screw to bring down this cost, and that includes also the repairability and damageability of the cars.
Okay, also the insurances.
Also the insurance side, because insurance is about 30 to 40% of the running costs of the car, so it's an important factor in the business.
Pablo.
I would say that, for example, governments need to help with the legislation. Investors need to believe and customers need to buy electric vehicles, and we need to put up fast charging infrastructures for the market.
Okay, last question to you. Who is going to win tomorrow?
Of course, one of our pilots, Frank.
Mahindra.
Mahindra pilots, Frank,
Okay.
or the other plane is gonna be just beating hard. I hope.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Pablo, Christoph, Morten, thanks for being here. Thank you to you all.
Yeah, okay.